Welcome to the Healthcare Nation podcast. I'm your host, Rick Janata, and we're committed to bringing you thought leaders in the field to discuss what's new and noteworthy in the health sector. This is the Healthcare Nation podcast. Okay, welcome to the Healthcare Nation podcast. Rick Janata, your host, in the studio with Joe Woolworth, our producer. Joe, good to be in the studio with you, man. I missed your face.
Yeah, welcome back. Welcome back from Florida.
I'm happy to be here. I'm in Studio B with you, our new studio, where we get some face-to-face versus Studio C, aka Coconut Studio down south. So glad to be here. And as is our practice, we like to do these postscripts, punctuate the year with it. And this is our fall postscript. So I know there were things you queried the internet, you queried questions that came in through our website, and please send in questions for us to tackle during these postscripts. But I know you have a bunch of them, so let's just jump in.
Yeah, I wanted to start with Ozempic.
Whoa.
That commercial just it's very memorable. But anyways, the big news lately is this weight loss drug, the GLP-1 class. What is up with that? We're talking about this drug and how this emergence is causing ripples far beyond the healthcare industry. So what's happening? We've got brands like Ozempic, Wegovy, and Monjaro, and surging popularity. Celebrities are starting to lose weight with them, and it's kind of like the new fad diet plus. So what's going on with that?
Yeah, well, I'd say this. I think number one, it's working, right? Because you remembered that that's more than a jingle. Let me put it into perspective first, starting with, look, we're not giving any medical advice here, or obviously investment advice. That's number one, but let's frame it up, right? Obesity, obviously a common, very serious and costly disease across the board. I think that we're upwards of 43% of the U.S. population being pegged as obese. This is an uptick.
That seems low.
Yeah,
I feel like it seems like more.
I think so when you're walking the streets, right? I mean, but I have to tell you this, there is also the prevalence of a level of severe obesity, right? When the BMI is even into levels where they consider this like very dangerous for health, upwards pushing like 8-9%. So it's a real issue. Is it costly? Yeah, medical cost of obesity about $173 billion a year, probably more than that because the most recent data was 2019 that I could. So yes, Ozempic, Wegovy, Monjaro, a newer version of them, all found to be very effective. They started out as diabetic drugs, but they absolutely have an impact on obesity. Obviously, as I said, type 2 diabetes. They're also looking at other indications in kidney disease, which is probably one of the most promising additional indications.
So when something like that happens, a drug that's set out for diabetes or a specific thing starts finding a home in other places, like just general weight loss. So I take it doesn't have to be prescribed for these Hollywood stars that just want to start taking it?
No, it's all prescribed. It's prescribed, but now some different things are popping up. So basically the generic version that's out there that you can get your hands on is a lot of companies are these initiatives are starting with this online prescribing. So you still have to have it prescribed to you, but there are other avenues that are allowing folks to get it.
So it's like one of those things where you can just answer a form online and they're like, your pills are coming.
I think it's a little more than that, but I think the one piece is there was even a potential shortage for a while, and this is an effective drug, but I have to tell you for type 2 diabetes, if you're using it and you need it, you don't want to have a shortage because folks are using it for aesthetic reasons, right? I'm framing that out. That's obviously my perspective out there. But I do think that there are avenues to get this outside of, I'm here, I want to get in a weight loss regimen, please, evaluate me. And I'm not judging that. I'm just saying it's out there. So it's working its way into the free market very, very rapidly.
So speaking of free market, what are some of the stock repercussions that could come up because of the popularity of these GLP-1 class?
Yeah, let's start. Novo Nordisk is now Europe's largest company, right? I think they're way up there. Eli Lilly joined the top ranks in the S&P 500. So the equity market's absolutely feeling the wave of this. There's no doubt. There are pluses, there are minuses. What's the corollary to this? You lose weight. You're not going to be snacking on foods. There's going to be a hit to other areas, I guess, in the consumer goods, retail, beverage markets. Absolutely. When you think about what will be the next steps along those lines. and other healthcare providers that are in the diabetic or even the obesity space. We know that sleep apnea, renal dialysis, bariatric surgery, folks who are in those markets, those companies that deal with either pharmaceutical, elements to it, drugs, alternative
Yeah.
drugs that are they're in that space, or even surgical instruments for bariatric procedure could absolutely get impacted.
So there's always seems like there's a new diet pill coming out, but this feels a little bit more medical than the traditional all supplement nonsense kind of stuff. Like, does it really work? Is that what we're talking about? Is this going to be a huge disruptor?
I think it's a real disruptor. I think there's no doubt about it. When you take a look at the far-ranging impact across the board of this, right? First of all, we know it works. I'm not going to get into the science of it, but it lowers blood sugar, it reduces weight, reduces cravings. I mean, there's I'm just going to say from this side, incredible positives that are out there. There are some negatives as well. And anyone who's listening to this, look at the negatives. I think there's a potential for losing muscle versus, all fat, but sometimes there's a
Mhm.
muscle implication. There's other elements of that. And we're going to have a follow-up podcast with an expert on this. There's no doubt about that. But look, it does work. I mean, the question here with anything that is, in the hype cycle,
Mhm.
is it something that folks are overusing? And what happens when you finish your course of this and
Right.
it's an injectable, it's not a pill?
Oh,
So
really?
do you start up again? I mean, you can't just stay on it forever. That's the other piece. And with respect to the market impact, there's no doubt about it. I think the ripple effects could be, big from the pharmaceutical side. Certainly the consumer goods, the snack foods, everyone who's in that world. But another side on the economic is if you feel good, if you lose weight, are you going to be more productive? So I think we have to see.
Right. So does it have a component to it that it's a appetite suppressant?
I don't know. I think that it's the way it inhibits. I can't really get, I don't know the science of it, but it definitely suppresses your appetite. I think it makes you feel full. I mean, there are elements of that where the satiation, you're
Mm.
satisfied with what you're eating. The question is, again, you can't be on this forever.
So obviously it could impact a lot of things. Companies like McDonald's,
Yeah.
Pepsi,
Yeah.
like the snack food companies. But what about the future economic implications, regulatory, insurance, landscape for the future?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, great question. I think the FDA approval for further indications, it's out there. We know that additional applications for kidney disease, certainly heart disease, when you think about weight loss, sleep apnea, a big one when you're have a high BMI. Pharmaceutical companies developing the pill form of this, that would be incredibly, I think, explosive with respect to market access for individuals who want this and would lead to a wider adoption. But I also think that, look, 48 million Americans, if you do the numbers that we talked about earlier, could be on these drugs by 2030. That is an incredible number. And has that translated into dollars and cents? That's over a $100 billion market for these drugs. So very, very, you know, wide ranging implications across the board.
Right. And these kind of drugs specifically, we know that there's a lot of medical conditions that are worsened or complicated by carrying extra weight. So
Yeah.
it's not just diabetes, like you mentioned, it could be sleep apnea, but there's a lot of stuff that can be affected by carrying too much weight.
Yeah, we're saying heart disease, kidney disease. I mean, there's just so much. And I think the other piece is the activity level, folks feeling good about getting out there, not falling. There are orthopedic surgeons who won't do knee surgery if you're over a certain BMI. So, I mean, it has implications that are absolutely in the health space that crosswalk perfectly to having a better health status and impacting morbidity. All these innovations, they don't just exist in a vacuum, right? They
Right.
have implications. So more to come on this.
Right.
The opinions expressed by the host and guests are for informational purposes only and not associated with any companies or academic institutions. Please follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts, as well as our YouTube channel, Healthcare Nation Podcast. And if you have any questions or want to contact us, please reach out to healthcarenationpodcast.com.